Okay, so I will now accept people on the session. Yeah. Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning. How are you guys? And welcome to our C&E Adaptive Learning Solutions Learning Hour for this Saturday. Kamusta naman po kayo this weekend? All right. So this morning, our learning hour session in focus is Amira Learning. And today we will be joined by the Amira Learning um, VP and other personnel. Okay, so let's just stay and let's have our breakfast muna, or if you want to have to grab a coffee, we'll start by 9:15. All right. Can you please chat in the chat box if okay na po tayo? Did we already have a breakfast? Ayan, all of our participants are engaging here in our chat box. Thank you so much po. Magandang umaga. Chat naman po natin sa ating chat box. Ano po yung breakfast natin this morning? I hope nagbaon po tayo ng energy and nagbaon tayo ng maraming energy for this morning, for this learning this morning po, this Saturday. Ayan. Okay naman po ba yung ating audio and yung ating um, reception dyan this morning? Please type in po number 1 sa ating chat box if you can hear me clearly. Ayan, thank you so much. Thank you. Ako, if you have other colleagues po that will be joining this session, please let them know. We will start in 9:15 a.m. Right. While we were waiting, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the our partners from Amira Learning, Mr. Ashish Gupta, the CFO and Head of International of Amira. And we also have here Ms. Malia Vela, the VP of State Partnerships, and as well as Mr. Peter Snyder, the VP of International Partnerships. Welcome po on this learning hour for Amira. So later on, we will hear more from them participants. So make sure that you have all the energy to listen and to focus, and also, of course, to have fun. If you'll have questions later on in our session, please feel free to jot down every questions that you have, and we will cater and we will answer that during the Q&A session. All right. So now, um, let me call on my colleague to officially start this morning and this session, and to officially welcome you, our dear participants in this learning hour. Thank you, and have a great and wonderful day ahead to every one of us.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Malia Vella. I'm the Vice President of State Partnerships here at Amira Learning. I'm a new addition to the Amira team, having recently served as the highest ranking Filipina in the state of California in education, working as Deputy Superintendent under our State Superintendent, Tony Thurmond, overseeing over 1,200 districts, several thousand schools, and almost 6 million students in the state of California, many of whom have Filipino ancestry. So it's been great joining the Amira Learning team. I actually started my career in the classroom, working as a substitute in early education, kindergarten and first grade, and eventually went into education policy. And it was during my work with the state of California that I first got acquainted with Amira Learning and all of the amazing things that Amira helps in terms of helping teachers and helping all of our students. Amira is a mission-driven company. We firmly believe that every child deserves the chance to become a reader. And we've really harnessed the power of AI to address the literacy crisis across the world. So I want to appreciate and take a moment to appreciate all of you being here today. It's a testament to your dedication, to your students, and to addressing the literacy crisis. We know that across the globe, students are not able to read simple text and not reading at grade level by grade 3 and grade 4. Filipino students are struggling with reading comprehension in the global student assessment. And this is, something that we're seeing, as I mentioned, across the world. It's something that consumed a lot of my time when I was the deputy superintendent in the state of California, where the vast majority of our students were not reading at grade level. So Amira takes and harnesses the power of AI. She is not something new. She's something that's really based off of decades of research around how the brain learns to read. And Amira marries the science of reading with some of the most innovative AI. It's not to say the newest trend, although we're hearing so much about AI trends these days. Amira is really rooted in decades of research out of Carnegie Mellon University and uses a number of different types of AI to help our students learn to read and to really get acceleration and growth through just a few minutes a week using Amira. She really helps teachers as well. We're not just saying that. We've got a lot of research, independent research that backs it up. So if you're like me, the research matters. It's not enough to hear that something works. You really want to see it independently evaluated, and that's something that we have. There have been a number of different studies, especially studies around multilingual students, and Amira has shown to really help students, especially multilingual learners, and is in the zone of desired effect. And some of the more recent studies, we had a study out of the state of Utah and some other studies in the last year or two, showed once again that Amira is as effective as high dosage human tutoring. Now, we're a supplemental tool. We don't replace the core instruction. That's what you all do. But we really help you make sure that you are delivering the best you can for your students. In that sense, Amira is a force multiplier, and she does a great job of assessing students, figuring out where they are at a baseline, giving you data in that assessment, and in doing so, not taking away from your really valuable instructional time. She can assess students in less than 15 minutes, let you know if they are at risk of dyslexia or other reading difficulties, and then she can spend the rest of her time on practice. Now, many of you have been working with students for a long time in your capacities, and you know how long it can take to do these basic assessments. It can take 45 minutes per student. Amira doesn't cut into those instructional minutes. You can assess an entire classroom in under 15 minutes. We say it takes 10 to 15 minutes. I was just in a classroom with 31 first graders on their devices, and they were all assessed in 11 minutes and 32 seconds. And you get data right away. So as soon as the assessment is over, the teacher is able to use that data. Amira will make some recommendations for small group work and also where to start the students off within a literacy block. She also can ingest curriculum and follow with it. She has a couple different tutoring modes. And again, she's delivering in real time interventions as the student is practicing their reading. So if you're like me, I've got two little ones. I've got a 4.5-year-old who's learning to read, and we know that 15 minutes a day reading with our children makes a huge difference. And many of you have practice time in your classrooms. Imagine getting data out of that practice time. Imagine getting data in a way that you can communicate it with parents to let them know exactly where their child is that day and that week, what they're struggling with, and where the parent can work with the student. That's what Amira does. Students get to pick one of 5 stories, and then they get to read to their friend Amira for a few minutes a day. And in doing so, over 10 weeks, will accelerate their reading growth substantially.
That was great, Malia. Thank you. That was a great introduction to Amira and covering a lot of ground and giving a great high-level overview of Amira. I just wanted to circle back on a couple of points with regards to what Malia was saying on Amira, and just give me one second. When we talk about the two dimensions of Amira that really promote growth, the first being brain-based research around the science of reading. What we know about reading is that reading is hard. It doesn't come naturally like other types of skills, such as speaking, where we've been doing it as a species for hundreds of thousands of years. Reading requires actually a rewiring of the brain. And what we've done at Amira is taken a lot of neuroscience and recent brain-based research and integrating a lot of this the systematic skill development in areas around phonics, phonemic awareness, decoding, and also comprehension to really accelerate reading mastery. And then as Malia was talking about the AI and the different components of AI, I'll just say, where we start and where Amira starts with is really in her ability to listen to students read out loud. So what comes naturally for most humans and most people is, when we're listening to someone speak, we're, 96 to 97% accuracy, we can understand what most kids and adults are saying. And for the longest time, it's been really difficult for technology to understand what kids from different parts of the world are saying when they're reading out loud. And we think Amira is really good. In fact, we think Amira is the best in the world at really understanding what kids are saying when they're reading out loud. And it doesn't matter if this student is from Manila or from Delhi or from New York City or from Mexico City. When they're reading out loud, Amira is going to understand what they're saying. And just like Malia was saying, she's presenting that information to teachers in a way that's never been done before, with a lot of depth and granularity, and we'll show you what that looks like from a teacher's perspective. But the most important thing that Amira does is from a student-facing standpoint, which is delivering that personalized one-to-one coaching and tutoring. And I'm going to show you a few examples here where, as Malia mentioned, whether it's in the classroom, or I'm just going to admit a couple of people in the session, whether it's in the classroom or as a homework tool, it's a great way for teachers to enable that accountable, personalized tutoring and that reading practice that's needed to develop reading mastery. So let me show you a few examples of how Amira works. And again, I'll just reiterate, if you have any questions in chat, feel free to ask them. I know we're going to go pretty fast through this presentation and there's a lot of things to cover, but feel free to ask any questions. And I may pause from time to time to see if there's any questions as well. And by the way, I'm Ashish Gupta. I've been at Amira for a little over 3 years. We had inherited technology from Carnegie Mellon several years ago, and we essentially added a number of reading scientists and data scientists to develop what you see before you today. And the person in the middle of this slide is Amira herself. So she's the avatar that's actually the reading coach for your students. So with that, let me show you the first example. This is a first grade student that's reading with Amira. As Malia mentioned, students, while they're reading with Amira, are going to be given a choice of reading material that's within their reading zone or their zone of proximal development. We have a library of several thousand stories, and we're also able to ingest whatever content that your district or state or school may want your students to read. But Amira herself also comes with a library of stories throughout the K through 6 grade. I'll also mention that Amira really focuses on that learning to read phase. So it's really meant for students in that kindergarten through 6th grade time period, or ages 5 to 12. Once a student becomes a pretty masterful reader and is on to chapter books, Amira is not going to be as helpful. But anytime before then, when a student's in their earliest stages of reading, to reading about 120 to 130 words correct per minute, Amira is going to be a great tool for your schools to have. So let me show you an example of how Amira works with one of our younger students.
Ready, set, start.
He will hop if you in
There are 3 sounds in this word. You can see 3 boxes on the screen. Move the first red ball into the first box and say the first sound. Ch. Now put those sounds together and say the word.
touch.
Super. Let's keep going.
Let me pause there for a moment. What the reading scientists will say and neuroscientists will say is students, when they're first learning how to decode words, it's important that they have a multi-sensory perspective of how they're learning a particular word or their letter sounds. And what that means is you want to give students a visual representation of each of the phonemes. You want to give them an auditory representation of each of the phonemes. And then you want to have them use their motor skills and their physical skills. And in this particular exercise with an Elkonin box, you're combining several different of those multisensory skills with both visual, auditory, and motor skills. So a student is essentially learning in a way that is very deeply embedded in reading science and proven to accelerate the decoding mastery process. So that's one example. I'll show you just 1 or 2 other examples from this story, and then I'll move on to some of the older readers as well.
Let's go to work on stay. Stay is an important word. Say stay 3 times as fast as you can.
Stay, 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 stay.
Got it.
So what reading scientists will also say is there's some words that aren't phonemic in general. And so the best way to master specific letter sounds and specific words is to have the student repeat that word several times. And that's what Amira is doing in this instance with this first grader, Dorothy.
Let's go on. Near.
Near. I like bunny. And you will too. But just don't
And
do not
this is a magic moment of Amira when
you
initially the student was not able to say the word
touch.
and now is able to pronounce and decode the word touch the second or third time they're able to see the word. So in this instance, you saw just a couple of interventions with Amira. You're noticing a few things. Number one, there's not a lot of images. There's not a lot of color. That's by design. We do have many different configurations on Amira where we do have the ability to turn on images and have more, I guess, color and images while students are reading. But for some districts and schools who are big believers in the science of reading, they want to remove as much distraction from the reading process. While other districts and schools want to have something that perhaps is more engaging for students to read, and so we're able to adjust accordingly. But I think more importantly, what you're seeing is that Amira is essentially able to listen to each phoneme, each millisecond that the student is reading, and able to recognize when a student is making a mistake or a particular struggle, and then essentially addressing that struggle with an intervention that's optimal for that particular reading skill that the student needs to develop. Let me show you an older reader. So the beauty of Amira is that she's going to adjust not only the content she's providing to students, but also the way she's intervening and coaching students while they're reading with Amira. And so what you'll find is Amira may focus more on some of those word recognition skills for our younger readers or for readers that are in their earlier stage of reading development. But for more mature readers, Amira may focus more on vocabulary building, background knowledge, and comprehension.
Welcome back. Please wait while I check a few things. Would you like to? I've selected 5 stories for you. King of All Animals Part 2. FYI for kids, staying safe in sports. FYI for kids, painting on the wall.
Bulls dash across the
I'm going
field.
to skip ahead just a
They
little
were
bit here.
tigers thousands of years.
Here's a fun fact for you about the word caves. There are more caves in Kentucky than anywhere else. Now you try reading this word.
Caves.
Super. Let's keep going.
Scientists called archaeologists.
Which picture best shows the word archaeologists? You are right.
Study pictures like these and other objects to learn how people lived in the past. The oldest painting found in Europe.
Instead of human. Be careful not to add us
Skip
at the
ahead
end.
just a little bit more.
Now you say the word.
Animals that the Native Americans might.
Sorry about that.
They show people dancing, celebrating, and changing into animals. Accent people of Australia also painted on the walls of caves.
How about we work on ancient? Watch my friend's lips say ancient. Ancient. Now you say the word.
Ancient.
Way to go.
So you'll notice in a couple of examples here in the first intervention that I showed you, it seemed based on the students' reading style, their past readings, their maturity in reading, that Amira was going to present some background knowledge of a particular word or give the definition. And then in the word ancient, what reading science will say is that when you see the upper lip movement of someone decoding a word, that's been a way in which students are able to, unconsciously even learn how to master a particular word. And so Amira, from her observation, determined that for that particular word, using a sound out or a lip sync video was the best intervention for that particular word. And so I guess, to summarize, I've shown you a few examples of over 63 different micro interventions or coaching techniques that Amira can provide. And it's really in this power of Amira's ability to observe while students are reading, diagnose when students are making a reading mistake or struggling with a particular word or passage. And then in that moment and in real time, essentially providing an intervention. And we call these micro interventions or coaching techniques that's optimal for that particular skill that the student needs to develop. And it's in that back and forth interaction that's leveled for that student where they're at, that's able to essentially provide and replicate that one-to-one tutoring and show meaningful growth. So I'm going to pause just for a moment. I think there's a few questions perhaps in chat. I'm not exactly sure, but if there are, we can maybe pause for a minute before I move on to some other topics. So it doesn't look like there's any questions yet, but if you have any questions, feel free to place them in the chat. And as Malia mentioned and articulated so well, Amira typically starts off with an assessment or diagnostics initially. And it's in that assessment or screener where Amira is going to identify any kind of reading challenges like dyslexia, but she's also going to place the student in the right reading zone. So it's in that time where we may identify a student as an early reader, and Amira is going to provide more scaffolded support in each letter sound. And I can show you an example if we have time later on where Amira is going to go through the O sound or the A sound and use different activities. And these are for your really early readers. Or Amira is going to identify a student as at the first grade level or the second or third grade level or fourth grade level, and then essentially provide students with reading material and coaching that's within their reading level. And as students continue to read, they're going to essentially be leveled up or leveled down and be presented with more mature stories or stories that are going to essentially highlight and help students master specific skills that they're struggling with. And in particular, Amira's interventions, micro interventions are going to focus on and help students build those reading skills that they're struggling with. And then importantly, and what I'm going to show now is essentially all the data and reporting that's available to teachers. One thing that's really important and a very critical role that teachers and administrators play is to be able to reinforce certain skills, to understand what gaps exist with students, to be a motivating force for students so that they are able to essentially have the necessary time on task to practice reading. And then also to be able to group students who are having similar struggle or similar challenges across the reading rope and essentially provide more targeted instruction to those students. And again, I'll show you a few of these examples of where Amira can really help educators as well. Before I do that, I'll just mention that Amira can be used in a number of different models in your schools. The most common model that we see in the US is where Amira is used within the classroom, and she's used within a rotation within the classroom where a set of students will be reading with Amira for 15 to 20 minutes, and then the other half of the class may be with a teacher learning a specific topic. And then after that 15 to 20 minutes are over, the students will rotate. What we also often see, particularly in countries outside the US, and Amira's in 18 countries outside the US, is many of those countries and schools don't have a one-to-one device for each student. They may only have a computer lab. And so in those schools and environments, the students will go to and visit the computer lab and read with the mirror for 15 to 20 minutes. In some of those environments, they may need headsets, and in some environments, they may not need headsets. And so we'll work with each of the schools and the districts to determine what the right design is. And yet, in some other environments, in countries like India and South Africa, where many schools may not have the digital infrastructure to support a program like Amira, Amira serves as a great homework tool where students can read on their mom or dad's smartphone at home for 10 to 15 minutes a day, or 30 to 45 minutes per week. And essentially, um, uh, teachers are able to see exactly what stories are being read and for how long. So there's a number of different implementation models for Amira that you can implement in your specific schools. Um, so with that, I'm gonna just show you very quickly, just to be cognizant of time, um, what when a teacher logs into Amira, what they're able to see at the student level, right? So I'll first start off by saying that every time a student interacts with Amira, Amira is going to essentially listen to what the student is saying out loud and essentially create a running record of whatever errors that the student has made while they're reading, and essentially showcase that and present that to the teacher so that the teacher can also listen to the student's reading.
I am a them is hard.
And so this is, as Malia said, when we're providing our assessment, a lot of schools around the world will ask teachers to provide an oral reading fluency exams a couple of times a year. And that's a very difficult, time-consuming task for a lot of teachers. If you can imagine, historically, every student would have to come up and read a passage for a minute. It happens sequentially, and oftentimes they'd have to be graded with pen and paper. And so essentially a lot of that time can now be done with the Mira, and it gives teachers back really important productive time that they can spend more with students as opposed to having to conduct an oral reading fluency test a couple times a year. So, but the overall point is that every interaction a student has is being evaluated by Amira and being presented to teachers in a number of different reports. I'm not going to go through all of these reports because we don't have enough time, but we have a number of asynchronous courses on our website that go through these reports in detail. And if your school decides to implement Amira in your schools, we're going to have a much more involved training process where one of our excellent customer success folks will go through these reports in more detail. But I'll just show you a couple of really quick examples of some of these reports. So when your students are taking an assessment, you're going to see a fairly typical benchmark report. What's a little atypical here, though, is that Amir is not only going to provide you with what we call an ARM score. This is a grade equivalent score for your students. So 2.62 is essentially a second grade, a little bit above the middle of second grade reading level. But she'll also provide you with other metrics as well in terms of words correct per minute. You can scale this by Lexile or by DRA. So many countries around the world may look at things on a Lexile basis or a CEFR basis. And so we can show how students are progressing across a number of different metrics. As I mentioned, what would be great, I believe the Philippines has instituted every Friday for students focusing on reading comprehension and reading practice, and really to focus on closing that reading gap within the Philippines. So this progress report's a great way for teachers to really understand what's being read, the progress students are making, the time on task, And essentially they can draw a linear line between what that student is progressing at in their reading journey, and essentially as a motivating tool, saying, look, if you continue to read, you're going to be reading above grade level by the end of the school year. So that's our progress report. I'll also just share with you that for every class or for every student, Amir is also going to generate an instructional recommendations report. This can get a little complex, so let me explain this in just a few moments. But across the different strands of Scarborough's reading rope, so whether it's word recognition skills in your bottom left, or whether it's meaning making or comprehension skills in your upper left, Amir is going to tell you what the percentage rank of your students are on a relative or normed basis. So these numbers that you see are on a percentage basis. And importantly, Amir is going to give you suggestions or recommendations on what types of activities can you as a teacher and educator work on with students in the classroom. And she's going to do this for each student. But what's really neat is she can also do this at a classroom level. And so what you're going to see here, which is great, and as it pulls up, give it a minute to pull up. But if you see an entire classroom, let me actually change this for just a moment. Give me a second here while it pulls up. You'll see in this particular classroom, one thing that's really, I think this report and another report really showcases Amira's observational power. Every millisecond that a student is reading, Amira's creating a mapping of what specific skills has a student have students mastered and not mastered. So, for example, when we think about the letter sound correspondence for the C consonant, Amira is going to know that this particular student has come across this 77 times, and they made about 22 errors. So she's flagging this as right now a yellow. If the student's making more errors, she'll flag it as a red. And if a student has largely mastered that particular skill, Amir is going to flag it as green. But what's neat is that a teacher can come in here and notice that in that particular skill, there are 6 or 7 students in the classroom that are really struggling with that skill. And so then the teacher can then group those students together and know to give targeted reading instruction to those students and in order to reinforce those specific reading skills. So again, just a number of different reports. We also have a badging report that teachers can create. One thing that we love to promote are fun reading contests in schools, and a way in which teachers can create badges and certificates for students as they reach certain usage milestones. So time on task, minutes read are really important things that we want to celebrate with students. And as Malia mentioned, we're the only screener in the world that's actually able to, give me a second, let me change this to the fall, that's actually able to have a very high degree, I think 97% predictive indicator for students who are at high risk for dyslexia. And so if you want to have your entire student population in your schools or districts take an Amira dyslexia screener, essentially within an hour, you're going to know what percentage of your students will need further medical testing or may have some reading challenges. So again, just a lot of information that can be provided, a lot of which Amira is already utilizing in its own AI and in its own coaching, but presenting this data to teachers and educators in a way that's allowing them to really understand what reading levels their students are at, and how teachers can specifically help their students in the classroom.
And what's
So
really great is is that the records are also created, and it gives you the data points to really have a meaningful conversation with the students' parents, right? Parents always want to know, what are you working on? How can you help my child? What more can you do? Through Amira, you can offer every student that one-on-one tutoring, and you can do it in a way that's going to meet the student where they are at and help them with the specific tasks that they're struggling with precision. And you're going to get you're going to get data out of that, and you're going to be able to talk to parents and let them know, this is how many words your students have read. This is how many minutes, how many stories. This is where they're at. And as a parent, we all know those conversations can be a little difficult sometimes. Parents obviously want their child to do well, and I think having that information really helps teachers. And then also being able to play back the recording so that parents can listen to their child's progress over time. It's an amazing snapshot of where students start the year and where they end the year through their reading journey and their work with you.
Yeah, those are both excellent points. And I was just pulling up both the parent report and progress report, where you can literally go to each of these stories and essentially pull up what the students read for the parents. So those are great points, Malia. Thank you. And then I'll just say at a macro level, for those principals and those district leaders on the call, and those reading leaders on the call, you have a dashboard that can provide you at a high level data across a school or across a district or across a grade level in areas such as usage, in specific dimensions of reading growth, and also comparative data around those students who are reading more with Amira and what their growth looks like versus those students who are not reading with Amira. So again, just as you can imagine, when you're able to listen and understand what students are saying at a granular level, you're just able to present data and a richness of data to inform decision making. And as Malia alluded to, our largest market is the U.S., and I think our largest district in the U.S. is the New York City Department of Education, and we have over 150 different countries represented there, right? And we're in 18 countries outside the U.S. And so a lot of our students, I would say about a third of our students, are multilingual learners. And what we found with multilingual learners, just like most of your students will be, where English may not be their first language or their native language, they actually show even higher growth than Amira. So if you remember the chart that we showed with all those different arrows pointing to research, Amira is about 5 times more effective than the next best reading product. It's almost an irrational exponential improvement in reading growth, but it's actually in fact true. And Amira is shown to be as effective as providing reading tutors outside the classroom. But we actually see even higher growth for multilingual learners. And so if there's one message we want to leave you with, is that if you're really interested in moving the needle when it comes to reading growth and literacy growth with your schools and your students, there really hasn't been a tool out there, a solution out there like Amira. And so let us help you both as teachers and as educators, help your students in accelerating their reading mastery. We have done many large-scale and small-scale implementations. In many examples, we've been able to double literacy rates in a year, where particular schools and states and countries will have literacy rates in the low 30s to low 40 percentiles, and we've been able to nearly double those literacy rates within 1 to 2 years. And so if that's something that excites you, if you're excited about having a light lift for your teachers and allowing your teachers to save time and to also provide differentiated learning and reach every student in the classroom, please consider using Amira for your classrooms. And so with that, I think we have a few minutes left for questions. So please, if any, yeah. So I think Romar has a question around. Okay, I think Malia, you've answered it. So yeah, Amira is an online tool. She's used one-to-one with students on their devices. So it can be a tablet, computer, laptop, smartphone. And so students essentially are taking an assessment for 10 to 15 minutes on that device. And so that's how she's doing it. I didn't show you an example of an assessment. I can, but Amir is essentially assessing these different skills when she's giving the assessment. In the assessment, Amir is going to be more observational, and it's a formative diagnostic assessment. She's not going to be interacting as much with students as she is in her tutoring mode. She's going to be observing more. And I'll also say that Amira is the most widely approved dyslexia screener in the US. And so if you'd like, we can spend some time and I can show you some videos of our assessment. And I think on our website, you can see some examples as well.
Essentially, they log in to Amira, and instead of going into tutoring, they would go into an assessment mode and then go through the series of tasks. Many of them consist of the student performing different oral activities, so speaking, reading, that sort of thing with Amira, and she records and assesses the student as they perform those tasks. So instead of writing down answers or having a tutor or an educator sit there and fill out the assessment or go through each question with the student, it can be done with a number of students all on their devices at the same time. It's really fantastic. She uses her digital ears and she does a great job of listening.
That was great, Malia. And if there's no questions, I can give a quick example of what an assessment is like, or just kind of go through it pretty quickly, but maybe we can do that real quick.
My name is Amira. Your teacher would like for you to read to me. Okay?
So I'm going to skip ahead. So this is a RAND test, a rapid automation naming test. This is a very common test for dyslexia. You can use numbers, letters, colors, pictures, but it's asking students to go through this, and it's the sequencing of these that really determines a student's level of dyslexia and the pauses they make between each of these. And oftentimes a pen and paper test can't capture what Amira's capturing when she's listening to students do this out loud. So forgive me, give me just a second.
Numbers on the screen. 2, 7, 4, 5, 3, 8. Ah,
she's going through
okay.
Some letter sounds.
Now it's your turn. Here you would say, told.
Right. And even here, as a student may have some issues with certain words, Amira is going to still correct them and interact. If a student is struggling with a particular letter sound, Amira may present more words with that particular letter sound.
But could be. For each one, put the different sounds.
And often, and most of our assessments end with an oral reading fluency passage that's essentially leveled for that student. If the student is struggling through that passage and making an error, more than 1 out of every 5 or 6 words, then Amira is going to level down and present an easier passage. If a student is whizzing through and reading a passage with very little difficulty, Amira is going to level up and present passages that are more difficult. What we talk about the zone of proximal development is we want a student to have an error rate of about every 10 to 15 words. So giving them enough motivation to be able to complete a reading story, but also having them have enough productive struggle as they're reading.
letters make together to form a
So these are
When
nonsense
you put the
words.
sounds all together, try something else. Each word.
Jim into the backyard.
So this is the oral reading fluency passage I was referring to.
And Jim went.
So there you go. So that's Amira in her assessment mode. So I hope that helps. Are there any other questions? I'd love to get a sense from all of you from this presentation, just quick feedback, you know, and be brutally honest, please, but like on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being super excited. This would be really great. I've been looking for this tool and so glad I came to this presentation, to 1 being, and this is really not for me, not really sure how this can help my students. If you guys can kind of put what you think Amira is on that scale of 1 to 5, would be really great for us to get a sense of how we can help your students. Well, really appreciate the feedback. Thank you for all the 5s. Great. Well, yeah, May, I think we're at time. So I'm happy to pass it back over to you. And thanks so much for giving us the opportunity to speak to your school leaders and teachers. I really appreciate you sharing your Saturday morning with us. And Malia, thank you so much for spending your Friday evening, and for all that you do for students in California, and also for your role at Amira. And also would not want to leave the call without introducing one of our newest members of the team, Peter Schneider, who has a lot of experience working with international schools and countries, and joining us as well in the next couple of weeks. So thank you again for your time. May, back to you.
All right, thank you, Ashish and Malia, for the very insightful discussion about Amira learning, where the educators can leverage it to provide a more positive learning experience in their classrooms. For the attendees who attended a while ago, don't worry, as we will continue to discuss Amira through the um through the next sessions that we will have. And of course, last but not least, I would just like to last check with our audience. Do you have any more questions for Ashish or Malia? If there are none, can you please type number 1 in the chat box? All right, thank you. But of course, I have one question though. Can anybody or can everybody type in the chat box what's the name of the world's first AI reading assistant to help educators build their students' early literacy skills? All right, thank you very much. So it's good to know that we can show Ashish and Malia that we were very attentive and energetic during this session. Okay, so what's next for our learning hour? What lies ahead for your school, institution, or classroom activities? Undoubtedly, there are many things to explore, fresh insights gained, and new information to incorporate. Given the dynamic nature of our world and the changes happening around us, adaptation is the key to staying ahead and being prepared. Wouldn't you agree? From sales, we hope that we have provided with you a piece of the key to future-proofing your learners. And again, on your screen here, you are seeing a QR code that could take you to the feedback and evaluation form of this session. This form will provide us insight on how we can improve our future events and activities with you. This would also serve as your attendance for this session. Additionally, if you wish to request for a free trial account or a more in-depth presentation about Amira, you can signify it on the form. The link to the form will also be available in the chat box. All right. So my colleague has chatted also the link to the feedback and evaluation form. Please feel free to fill it out at your most convenient time. But of course, we would like to get back to you as soon as possible. Showing here on the screen, please anticipate the arrival of your e-certificates within 2 to 5 working days at your registered email address. Moreover, by scanning the QR code on your screen or clicking the link in the chat box, you can access the digital note bag where we have curated specific Amira learning materials for you. This will serve as your keepsake, encapsulating the highlighted information from today's activity. What's next for our Learning Hour session? Join us for our next Learning Hour focusing on another digital solutions, ICEV. ICEV is highlighted or focused on the higher educational division. So if ever you have any colleagues or if you have any teammates, former teammates, and if you know any teachers in the higher education, please feel free to invite them to this session. But of course, if you want to widen your knowledge on other educational platforms besides from the basic education, we are also welcoming you to join our session. ICEV is a vast library of interactive courses that prepare students for success in various career paths. Mark your calendars on March 16, 2024, Saturday at 9 a.m. also. And don't miss the chance to discover new ways to elevate your teaching journey. You can take a photo of the slide or scan the QR code or click the link in the chat box to register for the next learning hour. We extend our gratitude to all participants, educators, and learning enthusiasts for joining us this enriching session. We hope you've gained valuable insights to enhance your students' learning experiences. Stay tuned for more similar events and activities from C&E Adaptive Learning Solutions. Visit our Skills Partners Journey portal by clicking the link in the chat box. Thank you very much, Isis. Thank you very much, Malia. And thank you also, Mr. Peter. I apologize for the disconnection I have experienced a while ago. But of course, my full-hearted gratitude comes from the Philippines to all of the Amira members and all of the attendees that we had for today. Thank you again to our guest speakers from Amira, Ashish Gupta, that's the CFO and Head of International of Amira, Malia Vela, the VP of State Partnerships, and Peter Snyder, the VP of International Partnerships. Thank you very much again to everyone. Have a good Saturday morning, and of course, have a good day to Ashish, Malia, and Peter. Our Zoom call will end in 2 minutes. Wishing you a wonderful day ahead with Steel. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for those who have finished the evaluation form. Hi, John. Good day. We just wrapped up the session for this morning, but we have recorded the session if in case you'd like to view it on your most convenient time. We are just about to end, but if you want to introduce some things to our dear participants who are still here in the Zoom call.
No, I think I'm fine,
Mm-mm.
thank you. I just wanted to
Mm-mm.
just to join at the end to see everyone.
All right. Thank
But
you.
thank you very much.
Yes. All right. Bye, everyone. Our Zoom call will end in about few seconds. Thank you very much again. Please feel free to reach us out at customersuccess@cebookshop.com for any further inquiries or questions.